it's important, I think, to be upfront with people. So people that are our ideal clients are appreciative of the fact that we're upfront with them and that we give them advice based on, again, the years of experience that they're hopefully hiring us for. Like that is, it all comes back down to that trust element, where if you don't trust who it is that you're hiring to take their advice and do what they say or whatever, then maybe it's just not the right person for you. The reason why we want to talk about this subject is that we don't really talk a lot about what our ideal client is. And it was a good exercise for us to just kind of look back through the years and think of some of the weddings that we were like, wow, these are the ones where we really felt like, and it was like the whole package, like not just this part was good and that part wasn't so good. Looking at days where it was like, okay, this couple was truly kind of the type of wedding that we want to shoot all the time. And it's not to say that if your wedding isn't like this or doesn't, go like that we're not going to work with you. The idea is that these are the type of people that we want to attract more of, because it really just vibes with our style and what we want to be doing. Through the years, we found that really, trying to hone in on what that is has really helped us. And we've been able to get these amazing clients because we've been so true to sort of figuring out what it is that we like and what we don't like.
It's hard because the last couple of years has been kind of all over the place too, right? With weddings that we accepted early on in 2019, 2020, when we were really just looking for volume at that time, when we were just starting out, when we were like really breaking out into the wedding scene, mixing some of that with some of the unicorns that we found that really spoke to us. And sometimes when you're starting out, it could just be that you don't really know what your ideal client is until you've experienced it and you go, wow, that was much easier because of XYZ. Or the flip side, that really sucked because of XYZ.
Yeah.
And you really learn, it's kind of like dating almost, right? Of like the clients that you really resonate with, that, every dad joke I laid out, there's like a peanut gallery. People loved it. They were just like, they remembered you for that. And then there's some where you say like one joke out loud. I'm not basing it on jokes because I say a lot of jokes on wedding days. And then like, it's not well received and you're just like not the same personality. And it's not just the personality. It starts even at the beginning when you first meet with a client, have that initial call when you talk about the ideas of what makes a good wedding, because we're definitely full of ideas.
But I think it's hard too, even sometimes in the first couple of meetings, because we're trying to put like our best foot forward in the sense of like, okay, this is what it's like working with us. This is what you can expect. This is what we really enjoy capturing, blah, 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 right? Hopefully you hire us. Like we don't really, like we can kind of get a sense of who the people are sometimes through the call, but sometimes they have like a checklist of things that they want to ask so that this way they can kind of compare apples to apples, right? And I feel like that's probably the hardest part, is that I've had some where I look back at like the first meetings or some of the meetings that I had with some of these clients, and I wouldn't have been able to tell you at that first meeting that they were going to be my ideal. But then I have some where I had like first meetings where I knew right away that they were. So it's kind of hard. And I want people to understand that it's not a perfect science here. Yeah. Even though we know kind of what we want to capture on a wedding day and what's important to us, and we try to like portray that when we meet with people, it doesn't always come through, I would say, even sometimes until the wedding day, where we're like, oh, okay, I didn't expect that from you. And I think about one of our brides last year where it was like, I felt like she was very, very structured and she wanted things to be like very, very organized and very to a T. And I was almost a little bit nervous actually going into her wedding day. And then on the wedding day, she was like a flip side, like the person that I want to hang out with all the time. It was a different vibe for me. But what she was doing is she was kind of like a sponge and like absorbing everything that I was saying, and then making sure that she was like, had everything that she needed to do, had her ducks in a row. And then on the day of, she just kind of like trusted everything and sort of like Jesus take the wheel, and was like her true self, right?
Yeah. And that plays into the amount of information that you feed your client through the process as well, right?
Yeah.
Because if you just meet with them and then you're like, the first meeting, you're like, hey, like it's really fun. These are the type of weddings that I really like doing, and this is how I approach it. And then coming up to the wedding day, you kind of just like look at the timeline a little bit and then, get to the wedding day. But through the process, you're not feeding them like, you should be thinking about this idea, you should be thinking about this. And I think that's one thing that we do really well is we continuously ask them like, hey, you know, did you improve this part? Like, we just saw that you could do like grand entrance into your first dance, into your thank you speech. And we're always trying to innovate new ways to make clients feel better about things. And now those are things that I bring up at like almost the first calls where I'm like, you need to do this, or like, here are different formats of how you could position your wedding to like have more fun, to open up more time here, to do this. Those are little things that you have to just keep planting the seed, because they may not even remember it, you know, the next time you meet the whole first call with them, because they're probably meeting with, like you said, 5 other photographers, and like, they're not thinking about ideas of their timeline. They're mostly just like, how much value can I get out of my dollars and things like that.
And so I guess when we go through this, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, exactly.
In the sense of, it's not that you need to fit all of these boxes. I mean, I think that I would say that the majority of our clients and some of our favorite sort of experiences that we had, they checked a lot of them, but I don't think that they would necessarily check every single box every single time, right? And so it's about trying to get there, because when you do, they, like you said, become that unicorn client where you're like, oh my gosh, like, why can't they all be like this? And once you get that, you realize that like you want to strive towards getting that every single time. And I can remember specifically at some weddings, just literally saying to the clients, like, I really want to work with like your friend group or whatever it is, again, because like this was just everything that I wanted and more, in the sense of like, it was, and we'll get into it, but there's like a perfect storm to, I would say, like a wedding day, in the sense of like, of course things can go wrong, or there could be rain, or there could be like delays or whatever, but how the clients sort of handle those things and how they kind of proceed forward is really a testament to just sort of the work that, you know, we've done with them and that they've done to sort of prepare for the day, right? And I think that the clients who really trust us, we always say this in every one of our like first meetings with clients, is that the people who trust us and like take our advice, we're not going to say they have like the best days ever, but they probably have much better days than the people that don't trust us. And it's because we've done it so many more times. Like, even if you're a guest or a bridesmaid at a wedding, you do not see all the stuff that we see, right? Like, you don't get to experience all of the behind the scenes that happens at every wedding. Like, let's just say that, like, every single wedding there's something. You know, I was just thinking about a wedding. I just saw these clients recently, and I was thinking about their day, and like they forgot the rings for the ceremony. That was one thing. And then we were about to do couple photos, and the bride's dress ripped off. And that was, you know, one thing. And then at one point, I'm pretty sure we were delayed at one point because of hair and makeup or something. Like, you know, like there was just like multiple things that went wrong on that day. But when I look back on that day, I don't think about like the things that went wrong. I think about how much fun we had and like how easy they dealt with like these curveballs that were thrown at them.
And that's a big one too, like that go with the flow attitude. That's why our biggest philosophy, or one of the big reasons that we really do a lot of work before the wedding day together, is to really train them on like, this might happen on your wedding day, but here are some ways we can mitigate risk. Here are some ways that we can take advantage of this specific situation. Putting them at ease and having a really good plan going to a wedding day is like why we relate to the type A's, the ones, the pre-planning ones. And then on the day of, it's really go with the flow, because you can't get hooked up on something small, like getting delayed for anything, because you can always find ways to like make up time or just have that conversation on the wedding day. And it's supposed to be stress-free, right? Like we want it to be stress-free for us, and let alone like our clients, right? But there's so many moving pieces to a whole wedding that you can't control, because it could just be like another vendor at the wedding that is giving people a hard time, right? Like there's just out of control things going on all over the place.
Weather or delays with traffic, or, you know, all kinds of things, right? Like we've seen it where like people have gotten on the wrong shuttle bus, you know, and went to the wrong wedding, right? Like things like that happen. It's kind of funny when you think about it. But at the same time, like that's just part of it. I feel like people just need to start embracing that something will go wrong on your wedding day. Hopefully we can laugh about it later. And I know from talking to couples from years ago those mistakes, those funny moments end up being some of their favorite memories when they look back on their wedding day. Is like the funny little things that happen where it's just like, okay, we're laughing at it now because, you know, it is kind of funny, but not at the time. Okay, so let's get into what we love most about our clients. And I think the first one has to be that we want our clients to absolutely really get like the high energy vibes on the wedding day. Now, it doesn't have to be all day, but I feel like there are times during the day where that high energy really makes a big difference. Would you agree?
Yes. Mostly because I'm thinking about what kind of high energy, like we don't want somebody that's like ADD, like literally running around in circles all the time, but it's mostly about having the energy and the capacity to like take direction and just have fun with it, put your own spin on it and really enjoy being in the moment. I think that's like what we really like, because if it's just a guy listening to what we're saying and like just doing it for the sake of doing it because we told him to do it, it doesn't translate very well into the photos and videos. Like you can tell when that happens.
You mean like when I tell the wedding party that they have to give each other piggybacks and run around in circles? And they don't get into it, you know? But when they do get into it, it makes for some really amazing, fun content. And I have a hard time because I'm always like trying to like suss out the situation, and
you kind of have to. You have to start small and like build your way.
Every once in a while, I get an idea in my head, and I just ask, right?
Yeah,
sometimes
like
they say no.
We're gonna throw the groom in the air 6 feet, you know, like let's go. All the groomsmen. Hopefully, there's enough of you.
Yeah,
and you're strong enough. You know, that's the thing. Yeah,
it's not a 250-pound man.
Exactly.
6 foot tall.
You have to know the boundaries.
Yeah.
To stay with it.
But I love when couples bring that level of energy to things. Like I have one like example last year where it was just like high energy the entire day, and it was so much fun. Like when it's like that, it's like, it's not like uncontrolled, you know, like when there's a wedding party who's just like obliterated and they're not listening. Like it's like controlled energy, if that makes sense. And those are always a fun time, because then I don't have to bring the energy. I just get to capture it. Where the opposite is true, I would say most of the time, where we have to bring the energy, where we're encouraging them to do stuff. And I think that's okay, because couples look to us and trust us to give them that guidance. And like we said, we always try to blend that perfect amount of, you know, that romantic, that gorgeous, that beautiful stuff, and then mix in some fun to bring the energy up. And that's really like the balance that I'm trying to achieve the entire day, right? There's going to be all those beautiful moments. There's going to be you crying when you see your dad for the first time, or the first look. Like all of that's going to happen. You know, mom sees you for the first time. Like we're always capturing that. But we also want to try and throw in some fun, right? So if the girls are popping in champagne, are we going to get them to like spray it a little bit? And we're going to get them to like laugh as they're doing it? Like if they're not laughing, you know, already, like, yes, we're going to like encourage that, because we want that level of energy when you're popping champagne. It's not like, woo.
Or they're at prep and, you know, they just start dancing by themselves, or like the whole group is dancing and they're feeding off each other.
Yeah.
Like that's fun. We don't have to tell them to like, hey, you should be having fun because it'll look good in our photos.
Yeah.
They just naturally are having fun on their day, and it makes our job so much easier to capture it.
It's not like a phone party where everyone's just like in the corner, like on their phones, right? Like that. Yeah. I hope going forward that people understand that like it should be just like fun vibes all day.
Yeah, that's another point, is that surround yourself with people that are going to bring the energy and bring the fun, and not suck out the fun. In opposite.
Sometimes
right?
It's hard. I feel like sometimes there's like traditions, or say they had to include the sister or something, but they don't actually hang out with the sister other than that, you know, like
this is advice for the sister. Be fun. You know,
True.
like for the wedding party, if you're a bridesmaid or groomsman or like part of the wedding, just like act as if it's your job to bring the fun. And like, that's going to make everyone have a better time, right? Like it's such a environmental situation thing, like being surrounded by people all day. And if like everyone's on their phones or not being, you know, super fun, or they're like even bringing you down with some kind of drama, I don't know, like leave that at home, you know, like we don't need it.
Exactly. No drama. That I would say is 100% also our clients. There's no drama. I mean, there's like always something, because family is family and we get it. we get it. But the thing is like on the day of, like, we let go of that stuff, you know, we push it down, right?
Yeah,
like you're famous.
Push it down, as
We
Kenny would say.
We just smile really big. And if you need me to be the bad cop, I will. You know, I will tell people to get the fuck out of the way if I need to.
So other than being fun
Yeah.
as, you know, a wedding couple, is we love it when couples hire or invest in a planner.
Oh, yeah. That definitely has to be one of our number ones.
Makes a huge difference for us and for their enjoyability for the day. I don't even know if that's a word, enjoyability.
Yeah. Well, just for them to be able to fully embrace the day and feel like they were a guest at their wedding versus being the go-to person. Like, if you think that you can't handle a lot of questions on a regular day, imagine a wedding day where you are getting asked every single question about every single moving part of the wedding day. That's what happens when you don't have a planner. Sadly, people kind of think like that we kind of become, you know, like a pseudo coordinator,
yeah.
which I absolutely hate doing. Like, if anybody has ever listened to this podcast, they know how much I hate that. I will step up and do that role if I need to at certain points of the day, in the sense of like, will I answer questions or give you guidance on things? Absolutely. I cannot do it the entire day. I cannot be your problem solver. And the reason why is because it sucks on my creativity in the sense of like, I only have so much capacity for a day. And the more that I have to think about timing of speeches because dinner is about to be served, like, I shouldn't have to be worried about that. You know, I shouldn't. I really shouldn't be worrying about that. I really shouldn't be worrying about a shuttle bus that got lost, and neither should you. You know, like, whatever it is that you think you shouldn't be dealing with on a wedding day, pretty much neither should I be.
Queuing people to start the ceremony, or dealing with the DJ and like their setup and making sure they can plug in, or whatever it is, right? Like where the table's going to go, all that stuff. Like the cake, when is that arriving? When is that like being cut?
When does it need to
stuff,
come out of
right?
the fridge? Like
exactly,
all that, like none of that should be up to you or us. So couples who invest in a good planner, and I'm not talking just a day of coordinator. I really think that people need to have somebody at a minimum. What I think they're calling it now is like wedding management or month of, or it's basically like not a full planner experience, but you still have some planning done with a professional before the wedding day. And then they are there to manage everything on the wedding day. Yeah. And the reason why that is so important, and I've talked about this before, but it doesn't just affect us, it affects every single vendor at your wedding when you have somebody like that who can take care of things. There's so many reasons to have one that it's kind of crazy when people don't at this point. Like, I feel like there's been so much information out there about why it's so important to have it that I feel like everybody should really be considering having somebody.
And I know this doesn't affect us specifically, but it could be small things like when we have weddings at Chateau Laurier. It's like, how do you deal with when vendors need to come drop off stuff in the loading dock, and like you have to coordinate all that stuff. That was something that I learned the other day, where it was like, wow, yeah, as a couple, if you're the one that's like managing your own wedding, do you even know how to do that? Like, and how much of your like mental capacity can you use towards that? And this is obviously very close to the wedding day that you have to like manage all these things. And then how much of yourself are you losing to those responsibilities, where you could be using it to plan something fun, to practice your first dance, to think about the things that are going to be important to you, or just to chill, to relax, because it can be a pretty stressful job to be a bride or groom and like make all these decisions, especially leading up to the day or even on the day of.
Like, the month before your wedding is chaos. I don't care. Even if you have a planner, it is still chaos, because there are a lot of moving pieces that finally can start moving, and it's always a month before. Like, having a planner is going to save your bacon. So anyways, definitely a plus when it comes to working with us, is somebody who understands and appreciates that having somebody as their go-to is really going to make their whole day enjoyable. And I think that people see the value in that, and that's where we really like that part too, is that they value that part, and it allows us to do a really creative job on the day of, right? To really
that's
fully
the moral
get
of the story,
into it.
is that if we have to step in and do some of those little responsibilities, it does really take away from our capacity to be able to provide a better service.
Another thing that our ideal clients we've found over the years has really sort of made a big difference is that they haven't spent every last dollar that they have on hiring us to capture their day because they want us, they value photography and they value videography, but they haven't spent any money on anything else. So in the sense of like, they want their wedding to look beautiful and captured beautifully, but there's not a lot to capture. And I'm not saying that you have to spend 20, 30, 40, 100,000 on flowers and decor, but if there's paper plates and balloons on the tables and like banquet chairs, I can't make them look any better than they are, right? And there's tons of ways where I can tell clients to maximize what areas they do decorate to sort of save some money. I always tell them the head table is where I'm going to take the most of the photos. Yeah. Decor that you can move from the ceremony inside, like make it a dual purpose. Those are some really good ways, but you really should be spending money on making sure that, it looks the way that you've envisioned it, because I'm not going to be able to make something what it isn't, if that makes sense. So it's not that you, like I said, you have to spend a ton of money, but we've been in situations where they spend every last dollar on us, but there was nothing like, they didn't get hair and makeup, for instance, or they didn't, have a suit that fit properly. And, those are just like small examples. Or they got like, faux bouquets, which are something that they don't photograph the same way as a real one, right? And so there's things where it's not that, again, you're not spending thousands and thousands of dollars, but there is room for you to sort of spend to make it look a certain way so that it kind of matches the overall vision. And I feel like we've been in situations where it's like there's just nothing we can do with what they provide. And obviously they know that's what it looks like, but it's kind of sad for us because one day we're going to paper plates and balloons, and then the next day we're going to somebody who spent like $30,000. Like, it's hard to compare that your wedding photos are going to look the same as theirs, right? If you haven't put the money into it.
I think that comes down to expectation, right? So ideal clients will have expectations based on reality.
Exactly.
And not very much like comparing, like you said, a $100,000 wedding to a $20,000 wedding and expect the same look and feel. There's definitely ways, like you said, that small details can have a big impact, and how you can more effectively spend your money to make it look good. And that's something that you can definitely discuss with your photographer, videographer, floral team, whatever it is, to make sure that your vision does come to life. But it's the expectations part where you just have to be realistic with what it is that you're going to get.
Exactly. And, just because you hired the best of the best to capture it doesn't mean they can make it look any different than what it is presented, right? Like, there's no photoshopping that later. That's just not something that we do. And so I've seen it, like I said, where the suit doesn't fit properly, or, like the fake flowers for the bouquet, and they didn't get hair and makeup done, right? Like, I can't make that look better. So there's more of an investment than people realize, and when it comes to a wedding day, and there's a reason for it. Over the years, we've found that sometimes we've said yes to clients, or we've been in a meeting with them and found that things were just not the vibe that we really wanted to have, and we weren't clicking on the same things. And sometimes waiting for the right person to come along has been something that we wished we had done. We've been in situations where we've booked a wedding and we've booked it, pretty far in advance. And it's not that they weren't great people or whatever, but we've had it where, an ideal client has come along and we've had to say no to them. And that's probably one of the hardest things as a wedding professional, is having to say no to somebody because you're already booked. You're maybe not necessarily very excited about their day. And it's hard to say that in a way that doesn't sound bad, but you can kind of start to tell when you're working with the client sort of more closely to understand that their values are really, really different than yours. What they think is important is really kind of the opposite of sort of what you're used to, or sort of that expectation, again, that you've, kind of put out for what it is that you do and your style and all of that, right? We've had scenarios where it's like, we know straight up that they not necessarily the vibe that we really wanted to have, like either the music was very different or they didn't even want to have any dancing or any party at all. And it's just like, why did they book us? Like why did this happen?
Oh, on the flip side, why did we accept it?
Yeah, I know. But, sometimes it's just like at the time it seems great.
It's a whole chicken and the egg thing where you don't know if you're going to book another wedding for that day or even get an inquiry for that day. But do you accept this wedding, at a discounted rate? Because that's the worst case scenario is that you meet with somebody, they come back to you and say, hey, can we do a deal on price? Maybe you discount yourself a little bit because you need the money, or that you don't think you're going to book somebody in the future, and then you book them at a lower rate, and then here comes an ideal client willing to pay full price, and that's the real kick in the pants there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess technically you could say they are not our ideal clients because they waited so long to book us, but it's definitely happened to us a lot of times, and it definitely sucks. And I think that's why people don't realize is that we have a contract for a reason, in the sense of like, if you cancel your contract, we've said no to a lot of people, right? Like we've had to say no. And once you start saying no to people and then somebody wants to like completely cancel their contract, you're like, like, sorry, we've said no to so many people for that date. And the hard part is I think we also don't know what the most popular date is going to be, right? Every year there's a popular date. We know this year it's June 8th, whatever reason. We've gotten so many inquiries
so That's
for
true.
June 8th.
June 8th has been a weird one.
But in previous years, it's always been like an October date or a September date or, whatever, an August date. Usually there's always one in August too, like the last weekend before the long weekend is usually really popular. And when that happens, it really sucks. Like, let's just lay it out here. It really sucks when, and I know, for instance, one in particular last year where they were getting ready at the same place and I had to walk by the wedding that I had to say no to, and it was stunning. And, it just like broke my heart a little bit because I know how beautiful it was and there's nothing we can do about it. But if you have to say no to someone because you really just don't think that it's going to be a good fit, it's better to say no up front than to kick yourself later. And I think you just have to be okay with that decision. I mean, we said no to a lot of people over the last couple of years. Either we were too busy or it just wasn't the right fit. And, we have some rules in place where we don't book anything less than 8 hours, because we've been in situations where we booked 4 hours and then, again, a 10-hour comes along. That's a huge loss in revenue, right? So for us, the way that we go forward is we book a minimum package, and that's just kind of how we go forward. And then we just kind of have to be okay with it, right? It is what it is. Sometimes it's not the most beautiful wedding. You don't really know that. Like, it's not something I feel like we get to have as a discussion with clients before they book us. Like, we're not like, hey, how much are you going to spend on flowers?
Yeah. And that's the tough part. I think you have to have those set of rules of, you need to be able to make these business decisions, not solely based on you have money and I need money, so let's make a deal. It's an experience thing, I think. It's once you realize, what it is you're looking for, what it is you can commit to. And we're lucky. We're 2 people. So we can take 2 weddings on a day and still provide that, hands-on experience. Most people, as a single business owner, if you don't have a team that's formed, then really you're committing to that one, and that's it. And it can be really tough, especially if you're committing to the ones that are not going to be ideal. And then the good ones come by and you have to say no. We've definitely done our fair share of that, especially through the pandemic with all the postponements that were happening. That was crazy. Like, we said no to so many weddings because we had to postpone like weddings that paid us, a fraction of the money that we were going to make that year, because we were raising our prices and people were postponing their $2,000 wedding like 3 years essentially. So we were still shooting and taking weddings that were, lower priced for a while. And now we're at a position we're pretty fortunate where we can say no to people, but that's also a tricky one. Like, how do you meet with somebody and then they want to go ahead, let's say, and you're just like, no.
Well, I think we've had a couple of scenarios where if I just didn't feel like it was a great fit, I never sent a proposal. Where it's just like,
that's one way around it.
I just find like, you know what, like they weren't like gung ho on this. So I'm just going to wait and see till they come back. That's kind of the best way to go around it. But yeah, it is hard. And we've had some people, go on Google and write some not so nice things of us because we've told them no.
Yeah.
And
that's another thing that you might deal with.
Yeah. People are ruthless, but it is what it is. It's just part of having a business. Sadly.
A lot of trolls out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing to consider too is a lot of people don't understand how long things take. So even if they email you and they're like, I want a 6-hour package, sometimes it's even worth having a meeting with them, because you could be like, hey, okay, let's break it down. What are you envisioning for 6 hours? And maybe that turns into an 8-hour package based on you're telling me this is what you want covered. And like, as my professional opinion, I think you need to do this. So don't like discount it right away if they're like, I want a small package, unless they're like 3 hours. They're not going to turn like a 3-hour package into an 8-hour package.
But I know that there are some photographers that will like sell like a 6-hour package just to like, they look cheaper than everybody else. So
yeah, but again, sure, you sell it, but that's a commitment you're making into not taking another wedding if an 8 or a 10-hour wedding shows up.
It's important, I think, to be upfront with people. So people that are our ideal clients are appreciative of the fact that we're upfront with them and that we give them advice based on, again, years of experience that they're hopefully hiring us for. Like that is, it all comes back down to that trust element, where if you don't trust who it is that you're hiring to take their advice and do what they say or whatever, then maybe it's just not the right person for you.
On the flip side, if you're not getting the vibe as an entrepreneur, as a business owner of the client, or if you already know that they're going to give you a hard time, sometimes it's really hard to suss that out in the first little while. And then like once you commit, it's almost like a relationship. You're putting your best self forward. And then like when you first start dating, and then like once 6 months in or whatever, you start being yourself and you're like, ooh, maybe I don't really like this person or whatever. But once you sign the contract, it's hard to get out of it. And that's why in our contract, like we actually had to review it not that long ago with a client, because they're like, hey, this contract seems to protect you a lot and not so much the client. And we're like, yeah, I know, because we need protection from crazy clients sometimes where we can cancel a contract if we feel like we're not
a right fit.
Yeah, not a right fit with you. And that needs to be in there. Like we could just refund you and tell you find somebody else. And some people are just not on board with that. But those people are not our ideal clients.
Yeah, and they didn't book, so we're good to go. But it's a fine line. It definitely is a fine line. So
it's tough. Yeah, it just comes through just doing it more often and learning from mistakes, because you'll bite the bullet a little bit and you'll book some people that are maybe a little less than what you wanted because you are starting out, you need exposure, whatever it is, and then other people will come along and you'll be like, why did I take this when I could have had that? But when you book things so far in advance, it's too hard to guess, So we still take some that are not like 100% ideal clients because we like need to make money, like we can't just wait for those unicorns to constantly appear, because I would say those are 5 to 10% of our weddings, like maybe even less than that, like 5%.
Yeah, I would say 10% is like a good number, but
which are like the truly ideal ones. And we try to mold and shape the other ones into ideal clients, but it doesn't always work that way. Yeah. But we always give it our all, and that's the thing that is with us. We always put the same amount of care into all our weddings, even if it's received or not, or reciprocated. That's the thing that will also turn into referrals, right? Like this one client may not be the one that is your unicorn and is the person, but maybe their friend who they recommended to you because you gave such a good experience and you gave ideas and you gave it your all. Then that turns into, more and more and more weddings.
I think that's really what it comes down to. But then sometimes the opposite is true, where like their friend group is just the same and you're like, no, like I don't want it.
Yeah, but at least
Yeah.
You'll know the friend groups, the wedding parties that you deal with. If you're like, this is a good group, like I should invest more in time in this, or I'm out. Like after this wedding, no more with these people.
We hope that gives you a little bit of an insight into what an ideal client is, and also what it's like to sort of be on the other side of things in terms of understanding where we're coming from and really knowing the ins and outs of what matters to your vendor, right? And every vendor is going to have a different thing that matters to them and what's important to them. And it all comes down to experience, right? And understanding that no two people are the same.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? And that's
And weddings are very personal things, right? So it's very hard to put them all in the same cookie cutter way of doing things. You have to approach it all differently and just be really receptive. It comes with experience and being able to, weed out the signs that you see, the early signs that this might not be a good fit for you, but also just weigh out the options. Like maybe this is just what you need to take now to pay some bills, and just, it sucks if somebody else comes along and you just have to accept that. When you get to the point where you can be a little bit pickier, which is kind of the level we're getting to now, which feels good. It feels good, but we had to go through all of that. And it was kind of an accelerated process through COVID, but we definitely skipped out on some really nice weddings and we learned our lesson.
Exactly. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Luke and Bethany turning heads with their flash. Wedding photographers capturing love in a flash. Taking shots like paparazzi, they're a dynamic duo. Posing couples like models on their love they bestow. Shooting weddings, they got the perfect frame. Luke behind the lens while Bethany brings the flame. Capturing every moment, they never miss a beat. Freezing time, making memories that are oh so sweet.